If you are ready to take a challenging look into the life and struggles of a young woman growing up in rural Louisiana, then today's book just might be for you. Today I'll be covering Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're taking a look at a book that I was not familiar with until just a couple months ago when it was number 97 on the New York Times list of top 100 books of the 21st century so far. But it appealed to me when I saw the subject matter and because Jesmyn Ward is actually a well-known author in her own right as a novelist. But this book is a memoir. And I find memoirs fascinating because they have a specific reason to be written. It's not just to tell the childhood of someone. Usually you are trying to trace something specific as you were growing up that you think either helps define the person that you were, or it is a justification for the way that you think or understand the world around you. And that's exactly what this book is. Men We Reaped tells the story of 5 men that Jesmyn knew growing up that died tragically. And what's interesting is each of them has a very different reason for what causes their death. And almost every reason is tragic, but it's not one reason. It's not just going to be because of drugs or because they are in gangs, although that is going to be one of the reasons. It's going to include all sorts of different reasons that any young man, especially a marginalized, in this case young black man, are going to face that are added struggles to what most average white middle-class individuals are going to experience. And I think that's her premise. And again, that is not because all of these people have some kind of connection to organized crime. It is just because there are added challenges. Sometimes it's as simple as where you grow up doesn't have as many streetlights. That means that traffic is suddenly much more dangerous. One of the men that she talks about was actually on the straight and narrow and testified against some gangs and was eventually killed for that. At least that is what they believed. No one was ever brought to justice. The one that is the most challenging for Jesmyn is her own brother. He's an incredibly important person in her life, not just because many siblings are very close to each other, but because she has a challenging childhood and she herself is always feeling like a bit of an outsider. She's very good at school, and so when her mother actually works for some wealthy individuals, they get her into a scholarship into a private school. This is something that is actually going to help her to go on to Stanford, where she's going to get both a BA and an MA, and then she goes on to University of Michigan to get an MFA, and she is actually currently a teacher at Tulane University. So she's very well educated, and some of that comes as a product of this scholarship that her mom acquired for her. But her father, who is not always in the picture, and he is, for a variety of reasons, going to make their life more challenging. There's actually going to be a moment when their parents have separated and she goes and visits her father, but her mother makes them take groceries with them because they do not trust her father to actually feed them. And so these are the things that are going to give her some instability that really make her extra close to her brother, which of course makes the tragic death of her brother all the more impactful and all the more devastating to her. I'm not going to go into each of the 5 men that she talks about or why exactly it is that they die. That is the reason for the book, so I would strongly encourage you to read it. I will say that her brother is the last one that she tells the story of, but she is referencing the fact that he has died from the very beginning. And you'll find out that the reason that he is killed is going to be from a hit and run by a drunk person, which is, again, not something that you could necessarily say, oh, this was a product of coming from a disadvantaged community. But again, when you see the aftermath of it and the man who hit him ran away is not going to spend any significant time in jail, you will realize that this will further demonstrate that even when you have tragedies that don't necessarily seem to be connected to your race or the community you come from, but you still see consequences that are very different for the people surrounding this tragedy, in particular the person that perpetrated this tragedy. And you see a lot of that. You also see an individual that's going to die by suicide. And so you're going to see a lot of reasons why these men in her life die prematurely. Now, they're not all going to be as close to her as her brother. Some seem to be not much more than acquaintances in all actuality, but even then, the fact that growing up, she knew 5 young men that died in their youth is telling in and of itself. And I think that that is what she is trying to demonstrate with this. And she does at moments reflect on why certain things are even more challenging than you would expect, such as an increased suicide rate, of course, the lack of resources for mental health and stuff like that. Some of the reasons you may not have considered that contribute to this increased mortality rate. So who's this book for? Well, it's for people that are ready to engage with that topic. I mean, you're dealing with the death of 5 young men. Regardless of your beliefs or understanding in terms of race relationships or disadvantages of people coming from different races, you are going to deal with 5 people dying young. And again, all of them are going to be people young, full of life, and their deaths are going to be incredibly tragic and incredibly impactful on everyone around them. So if you're not ready to engage with that, this book is probably not going to be for you. Like I said, she's a novelist, and so she's very good at her writing style. I will say something that I didn't fully understand in this book, because she doesn't make it front and center, is the fact that she is incredibly well educated. She does seem to have some kind of pathway out of her poor upbringing, but that's not something that she really wants to dwell on, because again, in a memoir, when you have a specific purpose, you choose what you're trying to tell, and that's not the story she's trying to tell. The story she's trying to tell is that if you look at her life, you can see some very tragic premature deaths, and that is something that shaped the person that she is. Who is this book not for? Well, anyone that is not interested in memoirs, especially memoirs that are going to force you to consider what are some social and economic causes of people dying early, especially things that are race related. And it's not for people that are looking for a happy story with a happy ending. That's just simply not what the purpose of this book is. Of course, I'd like to know what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.